Hello, my name's Edward Carter and I'm the vicar here at St Peter Mancroft Church in the heart of Norwich, and the city clock has just struck 1 on a Wednesday, and every Wednesday at 1 we have a short reflection. So welcome to all of you here in the church, but also if you're just looking around, do carry on enjoying your visit, but a welcome also to any joining us on the live stream. Well, I wonder how much any of you know about the Greenwich time signal. That's a bit of a fancy name for what's otherwise called the pips. 5 pips and a longer beep or tone, broadcast by, I suppose, pretty much all of the BBC radio stations to mark the hour, the top of the hour, as they say on some stations, particularly the World Service. All around the world, the pips or the Greenwich time signal are heard. I'm going to be brave and have a go at doing it. Beep, 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 beep. 5 short peeps and a longer half-second beep. And it is a very accurate and precise time signal. It's been particularly useful, apparently, for ships who, when you're sailing on the sea, it's difficult to know what the time is, but it's important to know for navigation as well. You can tell roughly how far north or south you are by looking up at the sun and the stars, but you can't tell how far you've gone east or west unless you've a very accurate clock. So very useful for that. And nowadays, the Greenwich time signal is linked to an atomic clock, very, very accurate indeed. And that's all tied in with some international conventions to do with the marking of time and the ways in which the world is divided up into its different time zones. Well, why do I mention the Greenwich time signal today? It was first broadcast on the 5th of February 1924. Well, it's now the 7th of February, so we're 2 days late, marking the centenary, but it's 100 years of the Greenwich time signal, which is one of those centenaries that might have been overlooked, but I did read of it, I think in one newspaper somewhere. But it's extraordinary to think that for 100 years, every day, without fail, quite literally without fail, every day for 100 days, 100 years and the extra 2 days, it's been heard on the airwaves, radio broadcast, certainly around the country and for most of that time around the world. And of course, if you think 100 years, that's a long time. And particularly the last 100 years, so many things have happened, extraordinary things. And it would not even be worth me trying to begin recounting all the different things that have happened. Difficult, challenging things, wars, conflicts, great things, exciting moments in the life of our nation, but indeed all around the world as well. And in a funny kind of way, the pips, the Greenwich time signal, has become a cultural phenomenon as well. I was reminded, the Olympics were held in London, of course, in 2012, but there's always a handover ceremony at the end of the previous Olympics. And 2008, it was in China, it was Beijing. And at the end of the Beijing Olympics, there was a handover ceremony to London. And how did that handover ceremony begin? It was the pips. Beep, beep, beep. That was how that handover ceremony was kind of marked. Amazing thing. And indeed, the pips, this time signal, it's become something that is very familiar, I'm sure, to all of us. And it's been much copied around the world. It's not just a BBC thing. It's not just a UK thing. Loads of countries around the world have adapted it or use it on their radio stations, particularly to mark the passing of the hour. However, 100 years is a great age to reach. Some people are quite worried that its days are now numbered. Why, I hear you ask? Why can it not just carry on for another 100 years and more? Well, the truth is, we don't really need to listen into the radio station or phone up the talking clock is another thing. We don't need to do that so much now. I've got in my pocket, and I guess most of us have, one of these smartphones that has linked to an atomic clock, very accurate, exactly what the time is. I can see a second hand racing round. I know exactly when it's got to, let's say, 1 o'clock on a Wednesday. So I don't really need to listen to the radio station anymore for the pips. And maybe that's a sadness, maybe that's just the way the world goes. But it set me thinking a bit about how accurate that clock is, in effect, on my phone, in my pocket, and how for 100 years people have felt the need to know exactly when the hour is reached. A very precise approach to time, a kind of regimented approach almost to time. And in the grand scheme of things, that's a very modern idea. After all, the pips, the Greenwich time signal, is only 100 years old, and for the Christians, it's 2,000 years of the Christian faith now, so it's just a small amount of time, really. And as I was looking this up, I discovered that one of the moments when the precision needed around time came in was way back in the 19th century, certainly in this country, when railways spread all over the country. And there was always used to be local time for different cities. So here in Norwich, the clocks would all strike at, say, 1 o'clock. But if you'd gone all the way further west to Bristol or, I don't know, Truro, somewhere right in the far west, because of the way the sun moves across gradually, they would be a little bit behind, a few minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes perhaps, later. But the moment you're running a national railway system, that can't work because you need to be precise. You need to know when the train is leaving, when it's arriving, at least if it's running on time. So that was one of the reasons why precise national time came in. Seems to me slightly sad, really, that we've lost that more natural sense of the sun rising, that kind of more instinctive idea of what time might be. And indeed, the more I thought about it these last couple of days, reflecting on the centenary of the pips, perhaps it's a bit of a shame that we have things like these precise time moments. It's a shame maybe that as I pull out my phone it says, yes, it's 3 seconds, 2 seconds, yes, we've got to 1 o'clock. Wouldn't it be nicer if it said, it's about the middle of the day, it might be lunchtime soon? You know, if my phone said that to me, maybe that would just be a nicer way of living life, a more relaxed way, more intuitive almost. You know, when I say to someone, well, I'll meet you in the park or I'll meet you such and such, nowadays we would say, well, let's make it 2 o'clock or 2:30. But wouldn't it be nicer if we said, oh, well, you know, when the sun's high in the sky and it's everything's just right for meeting in the park, that would be nice. Be more relaxed, certainly. But of course, the modern world worries about that because it feels less efficient somehow. It would be wasting time to sit and wait in the park for half an hour for the other person to arrive. But maybe that would be a good thing in itself, not being in a panic, not being in a rush, not needing to be precise. Well, of course, I'm a vicar, so I tend to reflect on things about the world and my faith as well, and indeed things in the Bible. And I suddenly realised that in the Bible, there is no reference anywhere, well, certainly not to the Greenwich time signal, obviously not, but there's no mention anywhere to seconds or minutes. You might be able to prove me wrong, and do tell me if you find them, but I don't think it says anywhere, 3 seconds later, Jesus did this, or at 5 minutes past X, the prophet Isaiah stood up and said this. It just doesn't say that. It doesn't have any reference to those very small amounts of time. It does mention days. Of course it mentions days, 40 days in the wilderness. On the 3rd day, certainly got mention of days. And sometimes it's got mention of hours as well, at the 6th hour. There are some mentions on Good Friday in particular and other places. But days and hours, they're a bit more spacious than pips and seconds, I think. And that led me to think that really in God's scheme of things, time perhaps has a different feel to it. It's not so much the Greenwich time signal version of time that's important in the Bible or in the Christian faith. There's more of a sense of something being at the right time. It's a kind of different idea. At the right time, this happens with God. Instead of at 12:17 and 20 seconds precisely, this will happen. God doesn't really work in that way, in my experience. And so we should perhaps be patient, more patient for those moments when we sense it is the right time for something. And indeed, I suspect as we look back through life and reflect on the amazing things that might have happened in our lives and also the challenging things, I suspect we don't think, oh yes, at 3 minutes past 9, that was a life-changing thing for me. I suppose we might do. We're more likely to say, that was a moment which is written in my heart. I couldn't tell you exactly which moment, which second it was, but it was a significant moment for me. It was a life-changing moment almost. It was a time when maybe God was present in a new and very powerful way for me. A kind of right time feeling, or even, to use a bit more religious language, a time of blessing or a particularly blessed moment. A real sense, a deep sense of well-being and delight, perhaps reassurance and protection. Well now, you know I'm fond of my crazy ideas. It set me wondering, what would be the equivalent of the Greenwich time signal with reference to all of that? You know, what kind of signal might there be to say, yeah, that was a moment of blessing, that was a time when something really important, a life-changing happened? What kind of signal would happen for that? And the truth is, I don't think there is one, obviously. You can't turn on the radio station and it will say, in a few moments there will be the life-changing moment signal, because it doesn't really work like that. It's a personal thing for us, but it's bigger than just personal. It's to do with God, it's to do with God's presence in the world, and it's to do with the ways in which we notice God. So we can't really expect an unmistakable set of pips when God is doing something. But it is good if we can be attentive enough towards God to notice those moments in our lives. But of course, the pips are fascinating. They are lovely to listen to, actually, still, even though they're 100 years old and the extra 2 days. But I hope next time I hear the pips, I hope I won't just think, oh yes, I know exactly what time it is. I'll also say to myself, oh yes, this gift of time, this gift of life is an amazing gift. And the gift of moments, blessed moments, when God is really doing something in our lives, well, those really are a gift. They are a wonderful thing. They are so important in our lives. My prayer for myself is that I will notice those even better and find that my life is changed because of them. And as I pray it for myself, well, I'd like to pray it for you as well. Thank you for listening today. We have these reflections every week, so next Wednesday at 1 o'clock there will be a reflection. It'll actually be Ash Wednesday next week, which is the start of the season of Lent. So there'll be a special reflection for that day in a week's time. But thank you again for listening today, and blessings on the day.